Hi everyone, this is Sarah from Tiger's Eye. We had the unique opportunity to sponsor Louise Redmond, a UK Royal Air Force veteran turned fitness coach, as she took on Mount Kilimanjaro last year. I got to have an incredible conversation with her and learn a lot more about her trip, and I want to share that with you guys.
I am an online wellness coach for women. So it's all about habit changes and trying to instill exercise, nutrition, habit changes, performance, movement into people's daily life and allowing them to understand that they don't have to do something ridiculously drastic. They can just do small things that add up over time to make big changes because people want to see big changes within 5 minutes, and that's just not how life happens. But if you're consistent, you'll get what you need. And so I run different programs for women. I've got one kind of ongoing at the minute that's actually going to culminate in a camping trip in September in about 3 weeks' time, just for connection and just so that they can understand that, just taking it right back to basics and just coming together and just talking about their journey.
Let's talk about your training before you went on the trek.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think helped prepare you mentally, physically for that expedition?
I've always been somebody who fitness is just a part of my life. It's as normal to me as eating, drinking, breathing. It's something that is every single day. So it's a really interesting question because the job that I do is to help women transform their lives a little bit so that they can see their potential. And I know I can see my potential. And one of my sort of phrases is I like to be able to open the van door and look, and whatever there is in front of me, I know I could achieve to go up it. And the same was for Kilimanjaro, which I didn't obviously even know that was coming. So I knew I was fit enough, definitely. I knew I was already fit enough just by the lifestyle that I lead, which is a lovely place to be because it means that anything that comes to you, you can achieve. The mental resilience thing, that mountain was really difficult. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But as I was walking up it, I was just kept telling myself nothing is harder than what you've been through. And that's kind of the place that I was in, if that makes any sense. It's almost as if the mental resilience was given back to me as I was moving through the climb, which was really interesting.
I guess a big part of that was probably going through the military, that training, and like just teaching yourself it's not as mentally or physically bad as I think I can push through anything.
100%. I had sense and I joined the Royal Air Force instead of the army. So it's a funny thing that because the amount of stick I've got over the years from various different people, because I played rugby and things, and the amount of stick that I've got for not joining the army is really interesting. But I actually had a degree before I joined. I travelled the world and had a degree before I joined the military. So I could have, if I had wanted to, become an officer immediately. But the reason I joined the military is simply because when I was at school, I did a careers test, and the careers test brought up the job of a physical training instructor in the Royal Air Force, and it just stuck in my brain, and I knew that it was something I was going to do. So when I was 25, and I'd actually done a small stint in the police as a police community support officer, and that didn't light me up. It wasn't what I wanted to do. So I applied for the Royal Air Force, and you have to do 3-day vetting to get in, and there's all sorts of physical tests. And I was pretty strong and pretty fit at the time, and thankfully, I did. I passed on the first occasion, and I got through. And then it went to Halton, did my basic training. Then I went to Cosford and did my 9 months training with a brilliant group of guys and a couple of girls as well. And I loved the course. Our particular cohort really loved being pushed physically. At the culmination of 9 months, my mum had been diagnosed with cancer, unfortunately, during that time. And I won a couple of the awards actually on that particular 9 month course. I won most endeavour and best on the whole course, which shocked me, massively. It had been said that in the RAF's 80-year history, I was only the second female to have ever been awarded the best on course, which was a huge accolade for me. It was massive. I don't think I had enough confidence fully in my own ability, and the military definitely gave me that respect. That's why I definitely became very attuned to dealing with men, but also working with women as well, and switching between the two in the right way. I've got a good mix of sort of the masculine, feminine, I think, to be able to deal with people. The role was fantastic. It was, all about fitness, and the opportunities that were afforded to me were just absolutely unbelievable. played for combined services, Royal Air Force, Rugby League, Rugby Union. I've done bobsleigh. I have played kabaddi for England over in India. There's all sorts of things, so much of adventure training, so many opportunities. I was sent to the Olympics as kind of really my first tour, if you like, if you can call it a tour. But I only did 6 years, and just because of the nature of the job that I did, I never saw any active service just because of the role it was. And I left to become a PE teacher actually when I left the military. But the skills and the experience that even just those 6 years gave me was you couldn't pay for it. You couldn't buy that experience and that knowledge and what it's given me as a person.
It sounds like you were everywhere. What were you doing in the Olympics?
It sounds really good, but it was absolutely ridiculous. We were guarding an empty badminton court on 18-hour night shifts, which was just ridiculous.
I've done worse.
Yeah, I'm sure you have.
We had to guard, it was after a training exercise, and the Intel building was empty except for someone had left an orange in the corner, so we spent the night guarding the orange.
It's crazy, isn't it? And you just think, what am I doing?
And with rugby, what was you were playing for the Air Force team?
So I was the captain of the Royal Air Force team, and I played for the combined services team several times for both rugby union and rugby league. And we had a great team. We played against the England talent development squad for rugby league, and then I almost got into the England sort of Great Britain team, but if I'm really honest, they weren't particularly fit at the time, and it was all a little bit. It just wasn't really for me, and that sounds a bit of a strange thing to say, but there's more of a backstory to that it just wasn't really the place that I wanted to be. The setup for England definitely needed to be a bit more inclusive and structured, and it wasn't. So I didn't continue down that path, although I definitely could have done. And it's been wonderful watching the rugby union. I went to the opening game against the USA, which was just, for me, I know England won, but there were people commentating that I used to play against or play alongside. And there were people, it was just a surreal moment that we sort of pioneered that, because I played in the Women's Premiership, what is now the Women's Premiership, all those years ago, against some huge names that now stand out in women's rugby, which is just, it was wonderful to watch how much it's grown and how the support is there.
Yeah, they're really having a moment right now, aren't they?
Yeah. Women's sport is just wonderful to watch at this moment in time. It really is. Yeah, I've always been involved in, military training, physical training, different kind of expeds and different adventures and different competitions that push you in a different level. And when you push yourself or you're pushed, the level that you can get to. And that definitely pushed me to some of the levels. But because I think I'd been there in places like that before, in my own head, I could tap into that reserve, if that makes sense. And that's definitely mental resilience and mental fortitude.
Did you notice other people in your group suffering physically or mentally?
The trip itself, I mean, wow. Really interestingly, even when I had the call, to go on the trip, Glenn said to me, this is not a holiday. This is, we kind of are looking for people that have been through some kind of physical, emotional, mental trauma. And I almost was like, wow, hold my drink, Glenn, while I just tell you what's happened. And he said to me afterwards, he said, because of you, I made sure that the trip went ahead. And then that unfolded into 5 other people who had been through some of the most traumatic things. It's not my story to tell, but they told us, and as the days progressed, they opened up, they felt comfortable, they felt safe, they shared, and they've been through all sorts. And it made me realise that what I've been through is okay, because other people go through hard things as well. And there was like a shared bond that we were safe in each other's company and we would look after each other. And, some of them struggled, they were on oxygen, and we waited for each other, and we weren't going up the mountain without each other. And this is just a group of people that did not know each other 48 hours before, but we really quickly became tied, and it was absolutely unbelievable. It really, really was. It was a lovely experience for that reason.
I think that was one of the things I loved most about being in the military, is how quickly incredibly strong bonds and friendships are created 100%. Almost overnight in an hour. We both like, I don't know, red M&Ms, and now we're friends for life.
Yeah, it's so strange the way that happens, isn't it? And that was, I think we all fell into that so quickly. I actually had, on the first day, obviously we just introduced ourselves to each other, and I had a pack of cards with me. And these cards are 20 years old. They're a Jack Daniels pack of cards, and they've been around the world with me. And I just happened to bring them, and they united us on that very first day. We were sat playing cards as if we'd known each other for 20 years. It was so strange, but it was also really nice.
Sounds awesome. And then like every night having dinner, everyone comparing feet blisters and all kinds of things. And
we were pretty well versed in looking after our feet, so none of us got blisters. We were. I think that just shows you the sort of military background of looking after your feet. 3 of them were ex-Royal Marines, and 2 of us ex-PTIs, 1 an ex-Gurkha. So we really knew what we were doing with regards to the foot care, the health care, the equipment that we brought with us on the mountain. And when the guide said, be in the tent for dinner at this time, we were all there at exactly the time that we needed to be. Be ready to go in the morning at this time. We were all there exactly with our bags packed ready. And that's that military 5 minutes before the 5 minutes before rule, so you're not letting somebody else down, and it. That's why you make that face, because you know exactly what I mean. Whereas we were hearing stories kind of from the other group, and as it got harder and as the days progressed and as it got a little bit more difficult and challenging, they pushed the boundaries of the timings and things, which was really interesting, the difference between the 2 groups. There was more of them, granted, and less of us. But I think that military discipline massively played a role within the exped itself.
And you were the only woman in the prior military?
Yeah. Which, you'll know this. That comes with its own set of challenges, because I don't care what anybody says, you're already on the back foot. And I don't care what anybody says. I know that these guys will have served with females before, but when you step into sort of that arena, every time you step into a new arena like that, you've got to prove yourself. You've got to prove that you're not weak mentally and physically. You've got to prove that your kit's in order. You've got to prove that you're not too loud, you're not too quiet, you're not too bold, you're not too brash. It's a real weird mix. And I definitely think that being in the military has allowed me to, having trained people in those environments, and when you've got a group that you're training, or when you're part of a group that you're within and being sort of scrutinized, you've got to be a certain way. And it might not be the way that you should be, if that makes any sense. And it sounds a little bit, you've almost got to play a game. And I wasn't playing a game, I was just myself, because I'm confident enough in my own abilities and who I am now, because of all the things that I've done and all the things that have happened to me, to be able to hold my own in that environment. And it was really lovely, because, whether this is true or not, but it was said to me, I shared my story with them and did exactly what they did, went up the mountain, suffered like hell with altitude sickness. I really suffered. And one of the guys said to me at the end, he said, "You're the strongest female I've ever met." And it was just such a wonderful thing to receive from somebody that I really value as a person and what he's achieved in his life. And that was a real almost like I know I did a good job kind of thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, because the whole point of the trip was proving something to you, not proving to other people, but then other people recognizing that you've gone through this struggle and you've succeeded. That's it's external fulfillment.
100%. And it gave that in absolute bucket loads. Like it's really even difficult to quantify how much it gave in bucket loads. It was unbelievable. It was such an emotional thing to do. It was such an emotional trip. And the way it landed was just, the timing was impeccable. It really was.
A time in your life where you really needed something like this, and I believe in, I don't know if I believe in like higher power or whatnot, but I believe in the universe giving you what you need when you need it.
I 100% agree.
The power of asking the universe for something and it giving you something that you need, in a sense.
Yeah. And I think just because of what I'd been through, I didn't even need to ask. Something was watching me and it put that in front of me. And I don't know what that was, but the connection that I felt to my dad on the trip was just unbelievable. It was absolutely unbelievable. It's really difficult to describe how it felt, but it was really special. It really was.
In your time in the military, once you got out and you've been doing your own training, what's been your experience with breast, back, neck, shoulder pain?
God, that's an interesting question. As a cyclist, shoulder pain, it was probably a bit of an ill-fitting bike, maybe, but again, I just endured it. I just used to cycle on the bike, even though I'd get off and I would have a horrendous pain in the back of my shoulders up at the back. That's probably down to cycling more than anything else. I'd say that that's probably the only thing I have experienced with regards to this.
What kind of bras were you wearing while you were doing cycling?
Just like Nike ones where it's all in one. Yeah,
Non-adjustable, one piece.
yeah.
Maybe it was a little too tight. Do you think, thinking back now, the shoulder straps that were digging in here,
Yeah, I've definitely had that before, 100%.
yeah, played a role?
Yeah,
And then with thoughts of the sports bras you wore in the military when you were doing treks or hikes and you had packs on or, flak jackets on, comparing what you can remember about that feeling to wearing the Tiger's Eye for, how long was the trek? It was 7 days?
7 days, yeah.
7 days, basically nonstop. How mentally, how are you comparing?
I just didn't really have to think about it. It wasn't something I really had to worry about, and it definitely felt really supportive, really comfortable. And when you wear, when you're wearing something that you don't need to consider, that's exactly when you've got the right product. You don't need to think about it. And why should it be something that you have to think about? There's enough to think about without having that as a problem as well.
Were you sleeping in it, or did it come off at night?
I never sleep in a bra, so I would sleep in just the thermals. So I would get changed. I would leave my thermals inside my sleeping bag, and I would every night do exactly the same thing. So it would be every day that I would wear it.
And did you notice any smells, any odors?
Nothing.
7 days.
Nope, nothing. There was nothing at all. Literally, I mean, the only means to sort of washing was wet whitewash or getting a little bowl with some hot water in and just crouching. It's not very nice, but you've done it, crouching down at the end of your tent and just trying to give yourself the best you can. And that was literally it.
So of all of your gear, everything else getting smelly and stinky, Tiger's Eye.
Yeah, there was definitely a much needed washing pile at the end of the trek. I had to put it all in a plastic bag and to carry it home because even though nobody's stood next to you like smelling it or anything, I just had to put it in a plastic bag to sort of bring it home.
Everything but the Tiger's Eye.
Yeah, well, yeah, pretty much. It was just so dusty and so minging and so nasty. It's funny actually because the Tiger's Eye I still wore to do a little bit of footage as well at the end. At the pool, I wanted to go in the pool. I didn't have a swimsuit, so I just threw the Tiger's Eye on again.
That was the after. I thought that was the start of the trip.
Oh no, that was actually the after the trip.
That's awesome.
One thing I was going to do, and I felt a bit uncomfortable doing, is every time we stopped at a camp, and I'll be honest, I just got more tired, and it came away from me a little bit more. But I'm glad I didn't do it because a couple of days I had shorts on. Now the local people don't wear shorts there, and I did think if I stand here in a bra, I don't want to offend anybody or because they were so covered from sort of head to toe. I thought that's probably not the best thing to do.
Yeah, we would never ask you to be in a position like that. And the whole
why I did it at the pool.
Yeah, and the whole kind of point is this bra is fantastic under gear, and you were under gear the entire trip except for when you were sleeping.
Yeah, definitely.
Some goals of yours for the future?
Kilimanjaro absolutely ignited a passion within me for more travel and more adventure and more mountains. So I'm sure you're aware that sort of Nimsdai and Aunt Middleton were on the mountain with us. And at the end of the trek, Aunt Middleton was speaking to us. And I looked at him and I said, ask me if I would do that again. And he went, oh, go on. Okay, would you do that again? And I went, absolutely no way. And he said, yeah, okay, but would you do something else like it? And I said, 100%. So our little group that we've got, the charity, the Project Odyssey, is already talking about Aconcagua in South America and Everest Base Camp and all sorts of stuff. So the amount of things that this has opened up and started me looking at is just absolutely unbelievable. It really, really is, to be able to get my hands on more mountains and trekking and adventure. It's just ignited that within me, which was lost a little bit.
Now, the most important question, how was the food on the trek?
Do you know what? It was brilliant. It was really good.
All the meals, right?
Yeah, it did get to the point, like after 7 days, it was a little tad samey. But I mean, fair play to them. Like they were, similar sort of ingredients and things. But there was one night I was absolutely blown away. We sat there, and he always did like a big reveal of what he was cooking, which was so cute. And he brought out pizza, peppered steak, chips, and vegetables, and I was like, oh, is this ridiculous? Is this a joke? Like, that was absolutely ridiculous. But it's a funny thing with altitude sickness because it saps your appetite. And so I remember when we got to 4,700 meters, it was at Lava Tower, and I had struggled like hell to get there. I'd really struggled like hell. I was actually on my period as well, which I think made the altitude sickness a lot worse. I really do, because obviously, you know, your blood count and everything and your H2O, which they're checking, is got to be down. And I'd love to see some studies about that. There must be. And they put this lovely meal out in front of me, and I just couldn't touch it. Like, I could not eat it. Well, I'm a bit of a chocoholic. I was going to say in secret, but there's no secret about it. And at the airport, I bought a bag of dairy milk, just little tiny squares of dairy milk. Every night I shared them with everybody, and we all just had one dairy milk. And honestly, the taste of that one dairy milk, it was like heaven on earth. It was unbelievable.
You spoke about your experience in the military, being a woman in a male-dominated field. Looking back now and having talked to us about our mission and all of that, gear inequality in the services, thoughts, concerns.
There's two elements to this that are really, really important as a woman. One of them is obviously a sports bra. Like it's almost laughable that how can we get away with not being given one? How can you get away? Because there would have been people that would have had a really ill-fitting sports bra because they never really would have had anybody give them any advice. Why is it not something that is measured, controlled, and as part of your kit? Because it's as important as carrying a weapon. It's as important as wearing a pair of boots. And then the other element as well is, and I suppose, you know, I don't know if Tiger's Eye could go down this route, but you know, underwear for women in the services is a huge thing as well. And having just done that trek for 7 days, being on my period, you know, there's not a toilet around the corner that you can just nip to. You have to be self-sufficient and making sure that you carry all the things that you need for that element. And any woman knows that's not an easy task, especially at altitude with carrying your own gear in a world full of men. You know, going to the toilet behind a rock, you know, literally we would stop and he would say, right, this is a break. Kings go that way. Queen, you can go that way, because there was only me. And I was like, every time laughed. And they would have a bit of a joke of, you know, go and send your emails kind of thing. And it was just, you know, it just made me think like I'm lucky in a way. I don't get the most horrendous periods, but they're still periods. Whereas some women I know really struggle, and really struggle. Exactly. Now, to have the right underwear, to have the right sanitary products, to have the right underwear that helps with the right sanitary products, because you know as well as I do, wearing certain sanitary products, things move around, they're not comfortable, they don't last 7, 8, 9, 10 hours that you're trekking. What on earth do you do with the used sanitary products? All of that, all those logistics that are another element that men don't have to think about. It's funny actually, because one of the men on the trek, Craig, he had a bit of an asthma attack when we'd come down from the summit, and he actually had to be helicoptered off the mountain. And when he got home, all his friends, all his military buddies were kind of giving out to him and giving him some banter, and they said, you got heli-medded off because you were on your period on the way down. And I piped up in the group and I said, well, I was on my period on the way up and I didn't need a helicopter. And they were all laughing their heads off, which I just thought was really good, because it must have made them think a little bit. Like, it would make me think if they had to deal with what we had to deal with. Like, Jesus, she's doing this with us. And all of the things she's been through and all of the things we've been through, but also she's on a period. And she's got to wear a bra. Like, you know, that's another thing that you don't even consider. Do you know what I mean? It's crazy, isn't it? But again, like I said, it was nice that it wasn't something that I had to consider, because it was comfortable and it was supportive and it wasn't another thing to worry about.
Would it interest you to know that the Air Force is the only service that does not issue bras?
Wow.
However, the Army and the Navy do. The Navy does not have a fitting service. It does offer a refund amount of £50 per year that a servicewoman can go off and get. The Army has a bra fitting service. However, the PhD study conducted by the University of Portsmouth proved that the company that's providing these bras, they do not make their own bras. They are merely a distributor, but they are distributing the lowest support, lowest functional bras possible that have the highest markup.
Because all three services joint should be providing
Exactly.
a product like yours, because it's not a gift, it's a necessity. I really love what you're doing. I think it's fantastic. The product is amazing, and long may it continue. And I really hope that the relationship with the military on all three aspects, flourishes so that people can experience what I have, which is really cool. It's such an interesting topic, really. It really is, because it's something that could really stop you as a servicewoman in combat or in sport or in your day-to-day job. It is literally something that could really stop you. And I tell you what, actually, I never really thought about this, but my uniform was white. It was white shorts, white socks, white trainers, white jacket, white vest. That's absolutely crazy when you consider.
Yeah. I mean, my periods, and so I was diagnosed with endometriosis so badly that I ended up getting a full hysterectomy for it. And the complications I suffered from that hysterectomy resulted in me being medically discharged.
Wow.
When all I wanted to do was get that gone so I could stay in and perform better.
Jesus, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, what am I, 6 years on now without a period? That's pretty great. But, I had to cut my Marine Corps career short at 9 years as opposed to the 20 that I wanted.
Yeah. And that's life changing. People don't understand that have not been in the services that is a huge impact on the direction of the life that you have chosen for yourself.
I mean, I ended up here,
which is, which I feel like you're supposed to be where you're supposed to be.
I mean, the universe does things, whatever it's going to do, it has a plan for you. It's just interesting how you get to where you are.
100%. I totally agree with that, especially this last August, more than anything, taught me that more than anything I think I've ever seen in my life or witnessed.
I will say, from the brief call we had before Kilimanjaro and this call now, you seem happier, you seem lighter, you seem like you've been refreshed and renewed, if that makes sense.
That's a really lovely thing for you to say.
If you were to give a message to your clients or any woman reading your story, what is your message?
You can always do more than you think you can. Always. The only thing that stops you is this. And as soon as you unlock the power of what your potential is inside, you can do anything you want. You literally can do anything you want.
Was there anything else that you would want people who are going to read your story to know?
I think a lot of people ask, what did it look like up there? And that will live with me till the day I die, because it was possibly the most beautiful thing I think I've ever seen in my entire life. And as the sun came up, it just made me cry. Like I couldn't stop crying. Like I was walking and sobbing, and also all of the effects from sort of the altitude sickness. It was, one of the most spectacular sights I've ever seen. So the reward that you got for all the hard work that you put in, just like life, is incredible. And I suppose that'd be something that people should take away.
It was really great being able to catch up, and we'll talk soon.
100%. Have a lovely day, and really nice to speak to you.